Hello, it's Dawn Michelle from Boho Tarot, and today I wanted to share with you my favorite oracle deck for fall, which is the Botanical Inspirations Oracle, and share with you all the decks that I pair with it. This deck is so versatile when it comes to my fall decks. I mean, granted, it's a deck that I can use any time of the year. It has a wonderful kind of minimalistic artwork to it that really does lend itself to working with a lot of different decks. And it has a really inviting kind of energy that I just love tapping into in the fall. And I was going through my decks and thinking about which tarot decks and oracle decks that I pair together during this time of year. And you know what? The majority of the decks I actually pair, the majority of my tarots, I actually pair with this deck. So I thought it would be fun to just share with you the different tarot decks that I tend to pair with this oracle deck, because it does tend to be the main oracle deck that I work with every fall. So let's start with one of my oldest and probably most used fall pairings, and that is the Green Witch Tarot with the Botanical Inspirations Oracle. I have talked about both of these decks at length on my channel, but I really do love the way that the Botanical Inspirations deck really does provide a wonderful focal point for many of my tarot decks, and it works beautifully with the Green Witch Tarot, pulling in that botanical energy, and we do see that represented throughout the entire Green Witch Tarot. So this is one of those pairings that is just kind of like an old favorite. It's one that I feel like I get a lot of really wonderful information from. The decks are quite compatible in terms of their color palettes and their energy, and I feel like both of them kind of take a little bit of a sort of comfy, cozy look at your reading. So I feel like both of these decks kind of have a gentler energy to them, and it really is a wonderful energy to tap into during the fall, because I'm kind of over that really expansive, hot, dynamic energy of summer, and I'm just ready to slip into something just a little bit more cozy, a little bit more comfortable, and something that really does kind of represent the energy of the season for me and has a nice soft message to kind of help me transition from one season to another. And I think this pairing works beautifully for that. Let's talk about another tarot deck that I love to pair with this oracle, and that is the Pagan Otherworlds. So whereas in the last pairing we had the oracle and tarot kind of being a little bit more of the cozy, comforting energy, I feel like the Pagan Otherworlds is a little bit of the opposite end of the spectrum from the Botanical Inspirations, whereas I feel like it's a little bit cooler. It is a little bit more like a crisp autumn breeze. It kind of can catch your breath a little bit. And sometimes the messages can be a little bit more on the harsher side in comparison to, say, the Green Witch Tarot. It is by no means like the harshest tarot deck I own, but I do feel like it has a little bit of a sort of cool autumn breeze energy to it, and I feel like the Botanical Inspirations kind of adds a little bit of warmth and humanity a little bit to the Pagan Otherworlds, which I think can feel very cold and distant sometimes. I do love the aesthetics of it. The color palettes I think are really beautiful together, and the messages are really wonderful because you get that kind of no-nonsense, kind of workhorse type of energy with the Pagan Otherworlds, where it's just kind of giving it to you like it is, and then you combine that with the little bit softer kind of takeaway message of the Botanical Inspirations. I really feel like it kind of helps to soften the Pagan Otherworlds up a little bit. It kind of, for lack of a better way to describe it, humanizes it a little bit. It gives it a little bit more of a heart and a soul, because for me, the Pagan Otherworlds, while it is an absolutely stunning deck and I do really enjoy working with it, it does have a little bit of a cool edge to it. While it does still feel very autumnal to me, in particular with the color palettes, it has a really interesting balance between that earthiness like we see here and the kind of cooler, almost air energy that we see represented in through the sort of blank space or the negative space on these cards. They do take place in this kind of starker environment, but we have these beautiful, deep, rich autumnal colors that kind of pull us back into that central focus, which I think is absolutely wonderful. I think I forgot to flip the oracle card, but that's okay. And I feel like the Botanical Inspirations really kind of helps draw that warmth out of it. So we get kind of this beautiful earthy air energy that again, has a very autumnal feel to me, because we're very kind of deep rooted into the earth, where things are kind of starting to slowly decay and fall away. And we're getting kind of that going within a little bit, but we do have kind of that sort of crispness when like you step outside and the air has gone cooler and it kind of takes your breath away a little bit. I think that this deck really does that beautifully, and it really does help, I think, to have the kind of softer, gentler energy of the Botanical Inspirations to really help kind of draw out the warmth from this very kind of crisp air tarot deck in the Pagan Otherworlds. So another deck that I really enjoy working with the Botanical Inspirations is the Modern Spellcasters Tarot. And one of the things that I really love about this particular pairing is that the Modern Spellcasters Tarot has a bit of a masculine feel to me. It is a bit rough around the edges. It kind of cuts straight to the point. And the Botanical Inspirations, as I've mentioned, has a bit of a little bit more of a feminine feel. It's a little bit softer, a little bit gentler. And I really like how it brings out that softer, gentler, more nurturing side of the Modern Spellcasters, which it does have the ability to integrate into your reading. So while this definitely to me feels like a masculine deck that kind of cuts to the heart of things, it's a deck I really enjoy reading with. It's a very straight to the point kind of workhorse deck for me, but sometimes it can be a little bit rough around the edges, and the Botanical Inspirations just kind of brings a little bit, again, of that softness out. And it really does help me to kind of integrate the two different aspects, so that kind of masculine or outward pushing energy with the sort of feminine, inward kind of nurturing type of energy. And I think it works really beautifully for that. Again, it works wonderful as a focal point, just in terms of, you know, this is maybe what I need to focus on, or maybe this is the takeaway message from the reading. But what I really love is how it kind of just softens the overall energy of the Modern Spellcasters, which sometimes can be a little bit in your face. And here's a perfect example of that. We have the Death card, and then we have this Judgment, right? This is two really wonderful images, but kind of in your face, right? Kind of really just, here it is. There is no getting around this. And then we have this beautiful magnolia in between with this nobility and self-esteem. In fact, let's look up magnolia real quick just so we can see what the inspirational message is. It says, nobility is not just something you are born to or a quality to wish for. It's an evolving process requiring lifelong commitment. To develop self-esteem, commit esteemable acts. To build good character, act with nobility of purpose. I mean, how beautiful is that between the Death card and Judgment? It's really asking us to tap into those energies within self, and realizing that that can all come out of these more challenging cards. And I think that that is just really beautiful. And again, love the way that these two decks work together. Just gorgeous pairing. I absolutely love working with a little guidebook, which is not something I often say with an oracle deck, but I think that it also bears mention that it does pair beautifully with the Druid Craft Tarot. This is, of course, my new little trimmed version that we did in the recent mod with me. But I feel like, again, as I've mentioned in many other videos and many other times, that having the more minimalistic imagery in the center and the more detailed tarot artwork along the outside really helps create a focal point for my readings, and it gives me something to really hone in on and then expand from. And so I love that in a sense, not only visually, because I think it creates a nice visual aesthetic, but also in the way that I read my cards, where I'm using my oracle deck in the center to really provide that focal point. It's allowing me to really hone in on what it is that I need to be working on or cultivating right now, and then using the tarot deck around it with these really beautiful detailed scenes and artworks and meaning and symbology within each of the cards really lets me expand upon that message. I've mentioned that in many videos. I know pairings and videos I've done on oracle decks and things of that nature, but it is a huge portion of my particular practice. And so I really want to, just kind of share with you how that actually works for me. And again, this pairing is another one that I think works really beautifully for creating that focal point. You can use it as a focal point as the start of your reading, or you can use it as a takeaway message for the end of your reading. You can look at it as, this is where we need to be. This is what we need to leave behind. This is what we need to walk into, right? Where that kind of past, present, future type of energy works beautiful for that as well. But these two decks, I think, really kind of work beautifully for that particular type of reading. And I really love the way the aesthetics of them work together. And I really love the energy of the two decks together. I feel like they really complement each other really well. Do you see how versatile this oracle deck is? We have it paired with the Tarot of a Hidden Realm. Again, as I've mentioned in a couple of other pairings, I feel like the Botanical Inspirations really kind of humanizes and adds that kind of softer personal level to the reading. The Tarot of a Hidden Realm is a wonderful deck and I really enjoy working with it, but it feels a little bit otherworldly to me. I definitely feel like it has a lot of fae energy in it, and sometimes that can be a little bit difficult for me to connect with, which is interesting considering we have a deck here of like, we're really close into people a lot of the time. So it's very intimate, but it also feels otherworldly intimate. And sometimes that can be hard for me to wrap my brain around. And so a deck that is really easy for me to work with, very familiar, using the Botanical Inspirations, again, kind of gives me that focal point. That's something that I can hang my hat on while I'm trying to figure out what these particular characters or archetypes or energies are trying to instill upon me. And I feel like this really helps to kind of open up the reading for me when I'm working with a deck that can sometimes be a little bit more challenging for me to approach. And it's not that it's a hard reader, it's a very easy deck to read with, but when I'm really diving into the depths of this deck, when I'm really looking at this artwork, when I'm really diving into the details, and I'm seeing these not so much as just tarot cards, but as embodied energy, as the fae bringing the tarot to life, that can be a little bit intimidating for me and hard for me to approach. And pairing it with the kind of softer, sweeter side of the Botanical Inspirations just kind of helps bridge that gap. I think it's really interesting to see how one particular oracle deck, as we've seen in the last couple pairings, can really bring out a different energy in your tarot reading. So if I were to throw a different oracle deck in here, let's just say, for example, I were to throw the Earth Wisdom Oracle in here, now I'm getting a totally different energy in this particular pairing. Now I'm looking at maybe the Earth Wisdom is not so much creating that focal point or that commonality, more like a language, right? Whereas this feels like it's creating a language between myself and the Tower of the Hidden Realms. I feel like the Earth Wisdom Oracle is creating a place for us to come together. And I think that's really fascinating when we see how different oracle decks create this really different energy between our tarot. The pairing with the Botanical Inspirations really kind of helps me to create that dialogue and to understand what it is that the Tarot of the Hidden Realms is trying to tell me. So another one of my favorite tarot decks to pair with the Botanical Inspirations is the Forest of Enchantment or Tarot of an Enchanted Forest. I can never remember which one it is. One of those. This is an absolutely beautiful pairing. And the reason that I enjoy working with these two decks together is because for me, the Forest of Enchantment is a challenging deck. And I don't mean that in the sense that it's hard to read, because I really don't have any trouble working with this deck in terms of how I read with it. What I mean by that is that it is a deck that challenges me, that brings to light the things that I need to work on, and it really brings them to the forefront for me. And so it is a deck that really invites me to look at the things that I need to work on, to look at the challenges that I'm facing in my life, and to look at those things that I need to overcome. It's really interesting because it's a fairy tale deck, and maybe we don't necessarily think of that as being a super challenging energy, but this to me is a deck of lessons to be learned. And one of the things that I like in pairing it with the Botanical Inspirations is that it kind of gives me something to put toward understanding that lesson, to cultivating that lesson. So when I'm looking at this deck and this particular pairing, and let's just take kind of a look at it, I'm looking at the Weaver of Spells and the Four of Boons. And I'm looking at, these are the challenges, these are the things that I need to work on, the things that I need to cultivate in my life, the things that maybe I'm ignoring or not paying so much attention to. Kind of like we see this little figure here who's underneath, you know, snacking on his little pie there. They're totally ignoring him, so he's getting away with it. Maybe there are things that I'm ignoring, and maybe some of those things might be this beauty and happiness in this hibiscus card. And so what I really enjoy about this particular pairing is that the Botanical Inspirations kind of gives me something to focus in on. So I see that I have these challenges. And again, this is just how I read this particular deck. It does work differently for other people. I've heard other people talk very differently about this deck. But for me, this is a deck that brings to light the things that I need to work on. And the Botanical Inspirations deck kind of gives me an idea of what can I do to work on that. So here for hibiscus, we have beauty and happiness. And the inspirational message is celebrate the beauty within you and all around you. You will attract happiness into your life when your message to the universe is clear. Seek joy. So that might be what I really need to focus on. When your message to the universe is clear, right? Maybe that's where I'm needing to put that energy into cultivating the growth that I need to come out of this challenge to work my way through the energy of these cards. And the Botanical Inspirations works really well for kind of giving me something to work on. Tarot of an Enchanted Forest kind of tells me what I need to work on, and the Botanical Inspirations kind of shows me how to go about doing that. So the last pairing I have for you is one of the more recent ones, and that is the Hush Tarot with the Botanical Inspirations. Now the Hush Tarot is not totally new to my collection. I got it last fall, and I worked with it pretty extensively during that time, and I'm really looking forward to diving into it again this fall. But one of the things that I really love about this particular pairing is that the Hush Tarot has a bit of an edge to it. It can be a little harsh, a little unforgiving. And that is one of the things that I appreciate about the deck. However, that can be really hard to kind of wrap your brain around sometimes. And one of the things that I really love about the Botanical Inspirations, as I've mentioned in many of the other pairings, is that it does add a bit of a softer edge to the deck or to the reading. It really kind of helps me to create a little bit of softness around this deep dive message that comes through the Hush Tarot. Because if you want to dive into the nitty-gritty of self, the Hush Tarot is fantastic for that. And it's one of the things that I really love about the deck. But it can be a little bit hard to take all at once. So by incorporating some of these softer elements of the Botanical Inspirations, we can kind of take a little bit of the edge off that bite. And I really enjoy that about this deck. It's one of the things that works really well about the Botanical Inspirations. And I use that a lot when I'm trying to just kind of soften the blow a little bit. But again, aesthetically speaking, these are beautiful together. Again, one of the main draws for me with the Botanical Inspirations is the gorgeous messages in the guidebook. So here we have the Seven of Wands and the Fool with youthful love in between. Let's just go ahead and look up Primrose and do a little message. So it says, when we are young, we are willing to take chances for love. As we go through life, we should remember that youthful confidence and exuberance in all we do. Always keep an open heart. Love is all around you. And doesn't that work really well with this Fool energy, right? Where we're talking about kind of tapping into the youth and the innocence. And when we're looking at it in terms of the Seven of Wands, that's what we need to cultivate a little bit, right? There's a little bit of harshness here, and we need to cultivate a little bit of softness, a little bit of love, a little bit of understanding, a little bit of that youthful innocence. And I think this works really well for that. Again, it's just a beautiful pairing. I love the aesthetic energy that flows from the cards, but I really love the way the Botanical Inspirations brings almost the human side out of the Hush Tarot. It brings it a little bit more out of the kind of deep into the nitty gritty, deep into the earth, and brings it out and then lets it kind of just bloom a little bit more. So again, another beautiful pairing that I think the Botanical Inspirations really brings something wonderful out of this deck, even in terms of the color, the artwork, the line work. It all kind of intermingles together to bring out this really beautiful message that has truth and depth and soul, but also has the ability to have a little bit of a softness to it, a little bit of grace, a little bit of understanding. And I think that these two decks work beautifully together for that. So that is a look at some of the tarot decks that I like to pair with the Botanical Inspirations. Again, this is like my go-to fall oracle deck. And I just thought it was so interesting how it can bring so much to the table with so many different decks. We have everything from, the Green Witch Tarot with that really soft energy, that really nurturing, supportive energy, down to the Hush Tarot, which kind of really dives deep into the shadows of self, to the modern spellcasters that brings out that masculine energy, and we balance that with this beautiful soft feminine energy, and it really gives us something to tap into, as we saw with the Forest of Enchantment or Tarot of an Enchanted Forest, whichever it is. It gives you something to work on, something to focus on, something to walk away with. And I think that this is such a versatile deck. I really, really enjoy working with it. And interesting enough, it's like kind of the oracle deck that I use during the fall. And so I just wanted to share some of the decks that I enjoy pairing with it, talk a little bit about how I work with it in case it is something that is new to you or you might want to incorporate into your practice this fall. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I would love to know if you have this deck, if you've worked with it, what you think about it. So please feel free to share with me in the comments below. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I look forward to seeing you again soon for more creative tarot for an inspired life.